Hi everyone, and welcome to Studio Sessions inside the studio here at Lorain County Community College. My name is Ron Yance, and we are very pleased and excited today to welcome two folks who are playing Stocker Center, the Hoke Theater, and they're really playing the country. To my far right is Sandy Hackett, and to my immediate right is Lisa Dawn Miller, husband and wife, and part of the Hackett Miller production team that is on tour right now with My Buddy.
That's right, and just so you know, I'm the wife.
And Lorain County Community College and Stocker Center, the Hoke Theater, is the first stop on the My Buddy tour, isn't it?
It is.
Let's talk about My Buddy. Let's introduce to folks what My Buddy is. And you know, if they listen to your last name, Sandy, and then they heard My Buddy, they probably get the connection, Buddy Hackett. But tell us about My Buddy.
Well, first of all, I wanted to say we're very excited to be back at Stocker Arts. We were fortunate enough to play here last year with a show that we have called Sandy Hackett's Rat Pack Show. And it was a great experience. We love the audience. We love the theater. So we're very happy to be asked back for My Buddy.
And I love Janet.
I love Janet too.
Janet Barlow, our director of Stocker Center.
My Buddy is a story about Buddy Hackett, the legendary comedian, wonderful, incredible, talented movie actor, star, comedian, Las Vegas headliner for many, many years. And this is his son, who stars in the show.
It's so embarrassing.
I direct the show, but in directing it, I really wanted to make it more about a father-son story.
Right.
It just happens to be that the father is Buddy Hackett and the son is Sandy Hackett. So the show kind of takes you through Buddy's life, but it's really through Sandy's storytelling. And I think a lot of people will be able to relate to it because it's about the bond that they shared and many years that they shared together on tour professionally and also between a father and son.
You know, Sandy, I asked you before we went on what year you were born, because your dad started, I think, the bulk of his career in 1950, if my research shows correctly, and you were born just a few years after that.
Your research is wrong.
Yeah.
He started way before that.
So maybe he became popular in 1950. But
Your research is wrong. You're 0 for 2. Keep going, kid.
But the point being, you got an opportunity as a young man to really remember your father and remember what he meant to people in our country from a comedy act and from a way of, you know, just making people smile.
Well, comedy, in the time that my dad started doing what he did, I mean, he was born in 1924.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, you know, the beginning of television. Films were moving from silent films to talkies and stuff like that. So he grew up in an age of this communication as it grew. At 21, he was on Broadway. So your timetable is just a
few years off.
Just
yeah.
a little bit
5
off.
years off, yeah.
But he started really up in the Catskills, which is where a lot of Jewish comedians, they used to call it the Borscht Belt, and they used to have something called what they called a tumler. And a tumler was you played Simon Says with the guests, you entertained them, you did anything you could just to keep them occupied while they were there. And he did that. And at night in a nightclub, they would need to have shows, and they'd get whoever seemed to have a personality and put them up on stage to entertain the guests. And he didn't know what to do in those days. I mean, he was 18, 19 years old. He'd go to the movie in the afternoon and come back and redo the movie for them at night as the show. And that's where he cut his teeth and learned what he learned.
I read that your father said, allegedly, that he didn't get a single laugh in his very first appearance, and it was at a place in New York.
I didn't get any either, and he called me, he said, "How'd it go, kid?" I said, "It wasn't pretty, Dad." He goes, "Me too, I remember."
So, you know, he knew the hard road it would take to stardom, and when you told him that you were going to get into comedy and follow his career, his first words were...
It was like a flood. Yeah. He just erupted. He says, I can't believe you're going to do this. It's so tough. You have no idea. And then he asked me what name I was going to use. And I said, what? What name are you going to use? I said, Sandy. No, what last name? I said, Hackett. Why? He goes, all these years I spent building up the name I hate to see is screwed up in one hour. Which is not exactly the language he used, but I understand we're on community college cable, so
We don't have a 7-second delay here, Sandy, so I may have to like join your tour and drive. I could be your driver if you swear today and I lose my job. Yeah. Lisa, do you think Sandy's making his dad proud?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the best way to answer that is before he would make him proud as a professional and an incredible talent in his own right, I think he would make him very proud as a son. Sandy is an incredible father. He's an incredible friend. And I think the lessons that he learned from his father were life lessons about how to treat people, how to care about people. And I think that is Buddy's greatest legacy, is that he was a wonderful father before he was anything. And yes, I think he would make him very, very proud. We have a daughter and a son, and he never got to meet them. But if he could see that Sandy is now passing on those life lessons to our own children, he would be very proud indeed.
Sandy, you're the oldest of 3 children that your mom and dad had, and they were married for nearly 50 years. So that was a talk about
they got along for almost 7 of them.
I mean,
it was like a lot of marriages.
And you and Lisa have 2, and they're both involved in performing now too as well, right?
Oliver, our son, is just, he has his mother's voice. Lisa's an amazing singer. So when she stops performing and comes to help me put this together, and I got to tell you, there was a war in putting this show together because I really felt it should be much more stand-up based. And she informed me that it would be a lot more music based to augment the comedy element of it. And I lost terribly. But well, actually I won in a big way because everything she said, her gut instinct, her focus, and how she propels the story of my father with me telling it with the music that she selected is really quite wonderful.
For you to say comedy and music combined, if we could just let the audience know, it's the perfect marriage because of Sandy's background with his father, and then Lisa's background. Her father is Ron Miller, who's written a few songs in his career.
100 songs.
Yeah.
He wrote For Once in My Life, Touch Me in the Morning, Place in the Sun, Heaven Help Us All, Yester Me, Yester You, Yesterday, If I Could, Someday at Christmas. And a funny story about our son Oliver, you were mentioning him. A couple of years ago, Justin Bieber sang Someday at Christmas for the president. And my father wrote Someday at Christmas, and in fact, Stevie Wonder only did one Christmas album, and my father wrote almost every song on that album. So I told Oliver, I said, wow, I said, maybe if we do a music video, put it out there with you singing a song from that album, maybe the president will see it and invite you. And we put it out there. I produced this wonderful video of a song called One Little Christmas Tree. It was a Stevie Wonder remake. My father wrote it. My son recorded it. We put it out there 2 weeks later. The president did not call, but Stevie Wonder did call.
Oh, wow.
And he said, I heard it. It was amazing. I'm just so blown away by this. I'm wondering if Oliver will come and sing with me at the Nokia Theater for 8,000 people and do that in honor of your father. And he did. I said, let me think about it, Stevie. Oh, okay, yeah, we're available. I was actually invited to sing on that performance too. And Oliver got up there and Stevie Wonder took his hand and was very emotional.
Were you both there?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. There's a video of it online on YouTube,
yeah.
And it was amazing. He talked about the circle of life and how young he was when my father met him and how my father helped him, and now he has this opportunity to introduce Oliver to the world. It was an incredible evening for both of us.
What a moment.
Well, it's a small world the way things happen because her father wrote all these, For Once in My Life, which Stevie was his first big hit.
Right.
And then he wrote his Christmas album and worked with Stevie. Stevie's first film performance was in a movie called Muscle Beach Party that my dad was in when he was little Stevie Wonder.
Uh-huh.
So it's amazing how circles intersect.
What do you two hope people take away from My Buddy? When they walk out of the theater at Stocker Center, do you hope they take away a night of laughter and a night of emotion? Because I got to believe it's an emotional show for you. It's about your father. It's about the father-son relationship that Lisa talked about. Your dad's been gone for a decade now, I think, yeah. Sandy. So but he's always with you because you're telling his story through stage.
I'll let Lisa answer first.
Yeah, what do you hope people walk away with?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. First, I wanted to get back to what you were talking about with the music and the comedy, and the reason that I pushed so hard to make this more of a theatrical production. I didn't want people to think of it as a stand-up routine disguised as some type of theater piece. I really felt that, first of all, when you look at Buddy's career and you look at all the music that was associated with the films that he did, with the stage that he did, we have a whole score written. We didn't have to do anything. And then you add some original songs, songs that my father wrote, songs that Buddy wrote, that people have never heard before. It's very touching. And I think when you talk about the emotional part, there's nothing like a piece of music or a lyric or a song that will take people right back to that moment. Where that's why my father's songs have endured, because people can instantly connect to that moment in time, my first dance at my wedding, or the first time I had a kiss, or my first boyfriend or girlfriend. So I think that the emotional component is supported by the music in the show. The comedy is obvious. We don't have to tell people that. I mean, obviously it's about Buddy Hackett.
Right.
There are going to be some really funny moments, but I hope what people take away from it is that they had a really good time. It was wonderful entertainment. I heard Berry Gordy once say, actually, for his new Motown musical, it's got to be entertainment first before the story. So I hope they're entertained. I hope they laugh. I think they'll cry a little bit, and I think it'll make them even a little bit closer to their own family after they walk away from this. And I think they'll see another side to Buddy. I would like to, for both our fathers, I'm working on a documentary about my father. I would like to stand as a testament to who they were. In fact, I wrote that in the playbill, that I would like to stand as a testament to who they were and what they believed in, and I hope to carry on all the wonderful things that they did, and I hope that somewhere they're looking down on us very proud.
Sandy, is it emotional?
Well, let me answer the question.
Yeah.
So what do I hope they take away from it? I've been performing now since I'm probably, the first time I was 11 years old with my dad, but I got into it accidentally at the time. But professionally, since my teens, late teens, and I remember people say, "Oh, we came to see you because we loved your father. You're not as good as him." And at 18 or 19, I wasn't. I was fledgling and learning. And one of the disadvantages of having him as a father at that time was people came to see you and they remembered, "Oh, we saw Buddy Hackett's son, he wasn't very good." It's now 40 years later almost, and I've been doing this a long time. And I went from, "We came to see you because of your father, we were big fans of your father's," and now it's, "We loved your father and now we're fans of yours." And that's in my time on stage, I don't say boastful, but I've earned, the right to share the stage with him. I toured with him for 10 years, and he was my teacher, but I had to earn where I am today to be the consummate performer. I hope people will walk away from that and say, he followed in his father's footsteps, and it's not an embarrassment. And they always come up after shows, they do, "We love your father. You remember, I saw him here, I saw him." They want to tell you stories. They want to tell you their Buddy Hackett experience. So now we're giving them a whole dose of stuff.
Well, it does exactly what Lisa was saying. I think it takes them back to a certain time in their life. And there's so much to talk to you two about. We're going to take a short time out. We'll just take a little break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about that first appearance on Rowan and Martin, I think it was, when you were 11. And then a time that your dad joined you on stage, but he forgot to bring his pants, if you remember that.
I thought this was a clean show.
Yeah, we'll be back. Sandy, when we left, we were starting to talk a little bit about, you had mentioned you were 11 years old with your first appearance. It was on Rowan and Martin, correct?
Yes.
Now, I looked at it. Were you really working with John Wayne? Or was he shot separately and just cut in? Or was
Me and the Duke were big pals. And at 11 years old, you don't know. I didn't really understand that was the John Wayne. I knew he was an actor. I knew he'd done stuff. And he was there that day. I didn't sit next to him and do the piece, but, I got to meet him and, "How you doing, kid?" That's about all I remember.
Did your dad take you to that particular day? Was your father with you? Or
He was on that show. He was the guest star.
Show. Okay.
Well, and I tell the story in my Buddy, but he was the guest star on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, which at the time was a groundbreaking show in many ways, also the #1 rated show on television, and also helped get Richard Nixon elected president, because he lost the previous election when he run against Kennedy because people couldn't identify with him.
Right.
And he came out on this comedy show and he goes, "Suck it to me." And all of a sudden America went, okay, he's got a sense of humor. And so that facade, dissipated for him. But I used to go with my dad to a lot of TV tapings, things that he did and stuff like that. So I'm going to work. I'm going to work. You want to hang out? Sure, Dad. So I went. So everybody's sitting around talking, just like this. I'm perched on a chair somewhere watching the actors and the directors. And I think it's funny. We should do it. We're not going to do it. It doesn't make sense. No one's going to get it. We should do it. And they're back and forth and back. And I just sitting here and I go, I'm just a kid, but I thought it was funny. And 8 heads turned around and looked at me and I went, uh-oh. And they went, perfect. Let's use it. And I went, what do I do? And my dad came over, want to be on television? I go, okay, what do I have to do? Just say that line again. And they put me up on a table and gave me an apple and said, just say it. I'm just a kid, but I thought it was funny. Bite into the apple, the juice ran down my face, and they said, perfect.
And Wayne said something like, is it dirty?
Well, what they did is they were trying to justify the joke. So they did the joke.
It was a dirty joke,
and
or a dirty apple.
No, was that dirty? I'm just a kid, but no, funny. Was that funny? I'm just a kid, but I thought it was funny. I'm doing my dad doing me. I'm just a kid, but I thought it was funny. And John Wayne, I thought so.
The question to both of you, the landscape that you two grew up on, I come from a big sports background, so I'll liken it to, growing up as, the famous, the son or daughter of a famous athlete, and you're at the ballpark with all these great future Hall of Famers, or you're in the locker room with these great future Hall of Famers. You guys were around Hall of Fame artists, Hall of Fame comedians, Hall of Fame actors and actresses. What was it like growing up like that? And was it, and the second part of that question, is it hard growing up as Ron Miller's daughter and as Buddy Hackett's son?
Go ahead, kid, because I wasn't there when she was, I didn't meet her till later.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that when people ask me that, there's 2 words that always come to mind. Honor. It's a great honor to be the offspring of such amazing genius talent, but it's also responsibility, because I think that there's such wonderful work especially in the case of my father. After he passed away, we found about 400 songs of his that no one had ever heard before. And I would like to bring about those songs, because in there, they're just as beautiful as For Once in My Life or Touch Me in the Morning. They haven't been heard, but people often ask me after I sing in a show or something, wow, where did you get your training? And I remember my father telling me, I don't want you to study voice as a young person. I'd like you to learn interpretation first. You can always get technique later. And so my experience was watching my father produce Stevie Wonder, Barbra Streisand, Diana Ross. That was the only thing that I knew. It seemed normal to me. So when I became an adult, my interpretation was really influenced so much by my father producing those artists, and then I learned technique and added it to what I do. But it is a great responsibility for us, I think, to continue to tell their story, to continue to preserve their legacy so people remember who they were. In my father's case, he was a writer, so the work will go on for many generations to interpret. But it was wonderful. And my father was this kind of bigger than life kind of a guy. He wasn't recognizable like your father because he wasn't a movie star, but he would walk into a room and everybody would want to be around him because he would sing his latest songs or he would make them laugh or something. And it's funny you were talking about sports fan. My father was a diehard Cubs fan, so you know what he went through. Oh, yeah. And I truly believe in my life, there's a life, I mean in his life, there is a lesson there because he always believed in tomorrow. He always believed he was going to have a #1 hit. He always believed he was going to have a Broadway show. And I believe it's because he's so used to the Cubs losing all the time that he had to believe in next year. And there's this little poem that he had. Some teams make you happy, some teams make you cry, some teams are great if they win or they lose because they give it a hell of a try. Some teams are poetry in motion, others a work of art. Some teams go out and break records, the Cubs just break your heart. So he was a funny guy, and in this documentary that I'm filming about my father, I really want to tell his story because I think most people don't associate the name Ron Miller with those big songs. They think Stevie Wonder wrote For Once in My Life or Tony Bennett wrote this or that. And I'd love to tell his story not only as a songwriter but also as an incredible father. His legacy also is that he was a wonderful father. And I kind of, in filming it, I wanted it to be more organic. I didn't want to say, this is exactly what I'm going to do. I said, let me film and get all of these interviews and see what people have to say about him. And the story will tell itself to me, and that's exactly what's happening. And I'm interviewing some wonderful executives from the old Motown days, and it's really quite a.
Just did one with Barry Gordy, right? Or you've got one coming
I've got
up?
one coming up with him. Yeah, I just interviewed Mickey Stevenson, who was the executive A&R, head of A&R at the time at Motown in the '60s, and he said Motown would not have become what it was had your father not joined us. My father was the first white writer with Motown Records, and my dad always used to say, you know, he was Jewish, so he'd say the Catholics didn't like me because I was a Jew. The Jews didn't like me because I wasn't a good Jew. So where did he wind up? He wound up at Motown. And I think the message there is a good message for today as well, that during this time in the 1960s when there was so much unrest and the president was assassinated and Martin Luther King was assassinated and you had the Detroit riots and so much tension at that time, here you had this little company called Motown in Detroit, Michigan, who they respected their differences and their uniqueness, and you bring this kind of Rodgers and Hammerstein musical theater kind of Jewish guy to work with the R&B and soul artists of Motown, the Marvin Gayes, the Smokey Robinsons, the Stevie Wonders, and what did they do? They made history together. They created something that has endured all these years and will continue to.
Right.
So to me, what's the message? If we respect our differences and uniqueness and work together synergistically, then we can create these wonderful things. We don't have to keep fighting all the time and hate each other because we're different. And I think that's going to be the story in the documentary, is that he was able to bring together a lot of people and make this wonderful song. So that's my answer. Go ahead.
Now, Sandy, before you get to growing up as Buddy Hackett's son, and I mentioned the sports thing. She brought in the connection to the Cubs. Your dad grew up next to Sandy Koufax, right?
He was in the same apartment building.
Same apartment building. So she's got the Cubs, but you got maybe one of the greatest left-handers that's ever, pitched.
And some people have asked if I was named after him. I wasn't. My parents wanted a beach, and.
But unfortunately, he's a Cowboys fan, so that,
Well, he's wearing, he looks very much like Jerry Jones today. In that,
I called the game
blue.
yesterday. Yeah. I said the Lions would come back. Yes, I did. I said, I'm sorry for the...
Very important things. You be quiet.
So she mentioned Diana Ross, Stevie Wonder, Barbra Streisand. Some of the guys you grew up, hanging out with.
Well, we have a show about the Rat Pack because my dad was very close friends with Joey Bishop. Joey Bishop has had a major impact in my life because I wrote, we produce, and I direct a show about the Rat Pack, and I play Joey Bishop because Joey thought I would be the right guy to portray him. My dad was friends with Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis. I mean, people that came by the house, Shecky Green, Don Rickles. Over the years, other people, like I'd walk in the house, come on in the living room, I'm sitting here with Marlon Brando. Is there anything to eat? No, we ate it. Danny DeVito came by the house, Don Adams, Larry Gilbart, who was an Emmy Award-winning writer for MASH. One night there was a party at the house, and Sidney Poitier was there. And I loved his films, and I introduced myself to him. I'd never met him before at the party, in the house. I mean, these things don't, when you say, what's it like? So I introduced, and I said, I'm Sandy Hackett, I'm Buddy's son. Could I ask you a question about acting? He said, sure. And I asked him one question, and Sidney Poitier and I sat down. He says, come with me. And we sat down in a corner, and we the whole night, I don't know, there was a party going on. It was me talking to Sidney Poitier, interviewing him about acting and directing, and the guy telling me, he just opened up a whole world for me about stuff. So there were certainly a lot of opportunities that most people wouldn't have. Comics. I've been touring as a comic, as a stand-up for 30 years, so I know a lot of the guys. But my dad's friends, they were all there, and I worked in Las Vegas. I was there at the Sahara. We had Johnny Carson and Don Rickles and Shecky Green and Flip Wilson, Rona Martin, Larry Storch from F Troop, David Brenner. My dad saw David Brenner on The Tonight Show, his first shot, and called the hotel and said, you got to book this kid. And he did. Billy Crystal. I've been blessed to see not only these performers, meet them, but I got to watch them work in Las Vegas over and over and over and over again, long before I ever knew I was going to be a comic. I was in my early teens, and I would just sit there and go and watch the shows because it fascinated me.
I've got to imagine there's a lot of your father in you. But is there a little of...
If there was any more, I couldn't fit in these clothes.
Yeah.
Is there Is there a lot of Buddy Hackett in you? When people see you on stage at Stocker Center, will they see Buddy Hackett? Will they see?
Well, in the show, there are many moments where I'm him. I do
Right.
his voice. So I talk to.
You want to do a little?
What do you want to know, Ron? What would you like to know? Ask me questions as my kid's father.
Tell me a clean joke.
Go to hell.
Hey, the tech guys are laughing. That's good. Now you know you're doing.
Guy goes into a pharmacy. Pharmacist said, "May I be of some assistance, sir?" He says, "I'd like to get some cyanide." He said, "May I ask your intent of the cyanide?" He said, "I want to kill my wife." The pharmacist said, "Under these conditions, I feel uncomfortable selling you the cyanide." He reached into his pocket, took out a picture and said, "This is a picture of my wife. Put any picture you want in there and post." And the pharmacist says, "I didn't know you had a prescription."
How much of that voice was actually your father, and how much of it, I mean, was it his Brooklyn upbringing that developed that distinctive style that he had, that delivery, or was it theater too, or was it a
It was
combination?
not theater.
Yeah.
He may have pushed it to its natural extreme, but as a kid he had Bell's palsy, so he had the drooping on one side of the mouth that never completely, it comes and goes, and it never completely recuperated. So he used to talk out of this side of his mouth, and that's part of, you take the New York accent with the drooping, and then you have a caricature of a face that becomes, very memorable.
I've got to ask you, when those folks were coming over to your house, was that the New Jersey house that your mom and dad bought in the mid-50s?
They came into all the houses.
Okay, but that New Jersey house has a history to it, right? It was a mafiosa house.
You did your research.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Albert
Ron, really.
Anastasia, who was
Do
allegedly.
you have any scary nights there where somebody was?
I have worse than scary nights there because I was little at the time, and I had heard the stories that Albert Anastasia. If you watch the movie called The Godfather, they show when they go out and they whack all the guys that try to get Marlon, the Godfather. And one of the scenes is they're in New York in the barber shop, and the guy's in a barber shop, and they came and they blew his head off. That was based on Albert Anastasia. That's how they got Albert Anastasia. And that was in 1956, the year I was born. So the house sat in New Jersey for 4 years, went through all the legal stuff, and finally my dad bought it out of, whatever you call that.
Probate court or something?
Something.
Did you find any money there?
I was 6. I didn't know money, but there was a room downstairs in the basement. The basement was huge. It was a full basement with like 10 rooms in it. And there was a room that was ice cold, and I had heard that it was when you, I don't hunt, but when you kill a deer, you bring it and you string it up to let the blood drain out. Yeah, I don't think there's any deer ever made it to that room. I mean, this guy, Albert Anastasia, they have this show on Discovery now about all the mafia guys. And I'm watching this mafia show, and they go, "Tonight, Albert Anastasia." And I'm watching, this guy ran Murder, Inc. He was responsible for over 1,000 murders in 10 years. That's that's a murder every 3 days. He was whacking people. And he built this edifice, and the other mob people. But the way it worked at Murder, Inc., if you were a mob guy, I'll probably get whacked for telling this story. If you were a mob guy, you called into Murder, Inc. to put in your contract to get a guy hit.
We went back to that house recently.
Did you?
About a month ago to go see it. It's incredible.
We've got about a minute left, I think. I wish we had 30 minutes left. And is there anything that you guys would like to make sure that we get out there that we haven't talked about?
I'd like to thank Janet for this opportunity to bring our show here for the very first performance. And thank you for, I understand this is your very first TV version of this show. So, they're both first for us. They coincide together. And we're looking forward to bringing my buddy across America.
Lisa?
I would like to say that, also thank Janet, thank you, great name, Ron. I hope people come out and have a great time across the country in this show. We love our fathers, we miss our fathers, and we hope to really get their stories out so that the world doesn't forget who they are.
Great. Thank you both very much.
Thank
Good luck
you.
on your tour.
Thank you.
Final thought.
My dad used to say, if it's dirty, it's not funny. And if it's funny, it's not dirty.
A great way to end the show. Studio sessions at Lorain County Community College. Go out and see my buddy somewhere across the country.